This huge global business needs to stop. It produces an average of 21 million tons in pollution each year. It's conducting shady business practices with little regard for human suffering if it means a profit, and going as far as to employ desperate children in third world countries. Not to mention how it's getting caught up in all your favorite name brands and hiding behind a corporate wall. No, this isn't Nestle what I'm referring to. I'm talking about the fast fashion industry. I'm Evelyn Yates, an artist and a fashion design major at the Art Institute of Austin, who has just been researching this topic in particular for the past 3 months and thought it would be insightful for consumers to know what's going on behind their clothes, in case you might not. But the textile business, for some background, started about the 20th century when clothing became more affordable. It wasn't about until the 1950s, however, when homemade clothing just wasn't as common. A lot of popular brands at this time were investing on ways that they could capitalize on this new and growing textile market. Cue the 1990s. Zara came into the States, and we first heard about this fast fashion business model from an article written by the New York Times. 15 days from the runway to the consumer was the method that Zara and similar fast fashion companies subscribed to. To top it off, prices were lower than ever. Now, honestly, it seems like a very consumer-friendly business model. A cute new swimsuit top and bottom for only $5? Count me in. Well, just as it turns out, things can be too good to be true. Child labor is still a problem in these warehouses, and business is still being conducted in factories that need safer regulations. You may have heard of the 2013 Rana Plaza factory collapse, but if not, this was an issue that occurred in Bangladesh in 2013, where over 1,100 textile workers lost their lives to a deadly collapse. The day before the collapse, large cracks appeared in the building, and an engineer who was called to inspect the warehouse determined it was unsafe. His report fell on deaf ears, and employees were still ordered to come back to work the next morning. As you can imagine, this incident sparked a lot of heat, and a lot of people started wondering, okay, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, we uncovered that 11% of all 170 million child laborers reported to be a part of the textile warehouse industry. Sophie Ova, who is a representative and campaigner for the global organization Stop Child Labor, had this to say. Her statement brings out to light exactly how children are coerced into the labor system in this fashion industry. Some companies are actually going out of their way in addressing this. Many brands are conducting background checks to their warehouses they do business with and reporting on their information. But it's not true for all of them. For example, if you were to go to Shein's website, they don't even have an About Us page. According to the 2021 Fashion Transparency Index, Shein, like many of these brands, scored a 0 on customer to brand transparency. As it comes to no one's surprise, cheaper labor will also lead to cheaper products. Currently, there is a drastic environmental cost tied to the use of these microfiber plastic materials. Brands are using cheap synthetics like nylon, acrylic, and polyester to make their low-cost materials, which inevitably will fall apart. Here's a testimony from Professor Sherry Manson, a chemist and researcher at the State University of New York. And well, it doesn't stop at the Great Lakes. Ultimately, the main solution I see here is for business makers and CEOs to put in better practices that can protect both the environment and the employees that work underneath them. But until such practices are put into place, here are some small habits you can build at home to help better reflect your shopping experience. Firstly, if you don't buy clothes for recreation and rather just need some things to wear, be on the lookout for sustainable brands that can be both stylish but ultimately are long-lasting. Some that I can think of off the top of my head are Teddy Fresh and Lucy and Yak. Yes, these are going to be a little bit more pricey, but the garments you get will last you a couple decades and overall be a returning cost because you don't have to buy these garments as frequently. And also, you can know that the group behind them is taking care of their employees and the environment. But if you are a little bit more like me and you like to splurge on cute garments to expand your wardrobe, so choosing not to buy new clothes every month isn't quite likely, here are some strategies for you. One thing you can check for in your garments is well-made seams and overall good cut fabrics. Of course, it will vary depending on the garments you get, but there is an example of what a nice quality garment looks like versus here is one that I've purchased from Runway, and you can see how the material is fraying and the threading is loose. Something to be on guard for when you're purchasing is just also synthetics. if you are purchasing a garment with synthetics, do what you can to make sure it does not touch the trash can. What you can do whenever it gets a hole is just simply get a thread and needle and just patch it up when you can. I will link in the description on how to do an invisible stitch. So regardless of what threading you use, it will leave no seam and it'll look just as new. And inevitably, when the time does come for you to get rid of your clothes, do what you can always to keep your textiles out of landfills and take them to the thrift store. If there isn't one nearby, ThreadUp is one that I would recommend. It operates entirely online, and they're very open on their values that they have towards sustainability. But regardless of what you do with this information, awareness is the first step. I too bought a lot from Shein and Romwe because the prices were great and the style reflected my personal interest. It was a match made in heaven. But ultimately, during this research, I've definitely had a bit of reflection on how not so great the industry is going behind that brand. Some, of course, are better than others, as per mentioned, but ultimately, fast fashion as a whole has got to be reformed. So maybe consider, is that cute $5 swimsuit you're about to purchase from one of those stores really worth that dollar tag price? Maybe. But ultimately, in the end, we will all see the real cost.